I was merely a quarter cycle out of combat training, and I was already sickened by this endless conflict. The Xylanthi were prevailing. They were merciless, sadistic, and totally devoid of empathy or compassion. Whenever they stumbled upon our colonies, they commenced the occupation by obliterating our gestation chambers, slaughtering our young while still in the larval phase. Defenseless, we retaliated as fiercely as we could, but our vessels were smaller, sluggish, and poorly armed. We faced a war of extermination, and yet our rulers persisted with fruitless diplomacy. After every parley with the enemy, they vowed to cease their atrocities, but they never upheld their word. They constantly deceived our leaders, and our rulers swallowed those lies like the groveling curs they were. I was assigned to the Tertiary Strike Force, outfitted with one of our race's newest ships. Top of the line, state-of-the-art, but still an utter joke compared to our foes. One advantage my craft did possess was a compact faster-than-light drive. Unprecedented, truly, in such a diminutive vessel. An idea sprouted within me as I reclined in my quarters, conversing with my wingmate. We discussed how we had just fled from a Xylanthi assault, surrendering an entire planet to them, condemning every one of our kin still stranded on that rock to a grisly demise. "You know," I uttered, my appendage draped over my visual sensors, as if to shield myself from the fate we had just imposed upon many of our species. "I believe the humans were correct." My wingmate coughed in shock. "Why invoke those lunatics?" he queried. "Do we not have enough torment to contend with already?" Humans. What they wrought. It opened many a visual sensor, that is certain. When the humans were first encountered and introduced to the galactic community at large, they were ecstatic. They were ever grinning, hopeful and optimistic for their futures. They were so elated to discover that they had finally advanced enough to be accepted into the galaxy. I recall witnessing screen captures of the Drevian ambassador laughing, literally guffawing in the faces of the human representatives. "Advanced enough?" he bellowed with mirth. "Who cares if you are advanced enough? Your planet is affluent in resources. That's all the advancement we require." The smiles on the humans' countenances seemed to crumple at that, though they valiantly strived to remain optimistic about the situation. Until the Drevians extracted untold millions of tons of resources and refused to compensate, saying, "Now you comprehend the necessity of obtaining payment up front. That knowledge is the only payment you shall receive from us." And the Slithic Empire. They invited 100,000 humans to inhabit their planet, only to shackle them in chains upon their arrival and enslave them. When the humans, enraged at the mistreatment of their people, demanded the release of those captured, the Slithic Empire responded, "Very well. We are conveying the 100,000 to you presently," and then launched 100,000 Zydronium-tipped missiles into human cities and settlements. It was after that when the Jantari Concordance provided them medicine to treat the Zydronium burns. Initially, the remedy was a godsend, curing the burns and ailments induced by the missiles. But then, every human who had received treatment perished in excruciating agony. The Concordance had exploited the humans as test subjects for a biological weapon. The humans, after this, severed all contact with the galactic community at large. They had become a laughingstock and were the butt of countless jokes and insults. They disregarded any ship, left any hail unanswered, and never ventured beyond their own region of space. But 2 of their years later, they reopened channels to the galaxy and broadcast this message. "We welcomed you with open appendages. Some of you mocked us, and that is acceptable. But if you betrayed us, this is your sole warning. Flee." Oh, how they all jeered. These foolish humans, what could they possibly accomplish? The galaxy did not ridicule for long. It seems that even though humans were the punchline of innumerable jokes, they were still capable of studying the weapons and craft of their enemies and improving upon the designs. The first indication that the humans might be a force to be reckoned with was when all 7 of the Slithic Empire's core worlds were bombarded with tens of thousands of a new breed of Zydronium missile, ones which appeared to react violently with the atmosphere itself, rendering the air unbreathable and causing beings to spontaneously combust where they stood. even 1,000 miles from the missile's impact site. Most of the galaxy presumed this a fluke, that the humans blindly stumbled into creating a weapon that functioned better than they intended. But when the Jantari Concordance began to fall ill, world after world of Concordance members perishing in agony from a disease so virulent, it prompted necrosis of the epidermis to the extent that body parts started to slough off the infected. The galaxy realized this was indeed the humans, exacting vengeance. Medical teams from numerous worlds studied the virus, and it appeared the Jantari Concordance's own disease they had used on the humans was mutated with a human affliction called leprosy, and the outcome was calamitous. The galactic community at large implored the humans, beseeched them to terminate their warfare, and none so fervently as the Drevians. They apologized to the humans, offered to repay double what they owed. They waited in trepidation for the human response, and when over a dozen vast, angular vessels materialized in the skies above the Drevian homeworld seemingly out of nowhere, immense and bristling with armaments, the Drevians were never heard from again. Their world was laid to waste. And the humans transmitted one final message over 600 years ago. Do not approach human space. Do not come near us. Do not attempt to contact us. Do not even utter our name. If any vessel approaches, be it one of peace or war, it shall be obliterated. There shall be no further warning. The galaxy's races inevitably assembled for war. How dare this upstart race dictate orders to them? So thousands of ships flew towards human space to wage war. Not a single one returned. Not one? Over the centuries, envoys have been dispatched to human space, all with the same result. The ship's engines would inexplicably fail, then the vessel would be destroyed. The humans were right, I repeated. Every other race in this galaxy sits idle and observes us perish, slowly at the hands of the Xylanthi. They do nothing. We would all fare better if we were simply left undisturbed. We would be better off if we emulated the humans. And I paused. My wingmate scoffed, but an idea had germinated in my mind. A wild, outrageous idea, but no more outrageous than flying off underarmed to confront a superior adversary. Tomorrow, I would pilot towards human space. Tomorrow, I would commit the unthinkable act no one dared attempt for centuries. Tomorrow, I would entreat aid from the most formidable race in the galaxy. It is unsurprising that when I departed, veering away from battle, my superiors deemed me a craven. They threatened me with execution if I did not return with their vessel, but I was already light years beyond their reach. My craft was, after all, the swiftest single-pilot vehicle my race possessed. Even as rapid as it was, it took weeks for me to approach what we all assumed was human-controlled space. I was anxious, fearful that at any moment I would be vaporized by some unseen force, but still my ship pressed onward. Days later, as my provisions dwindled, my engines abruptly failed for no apparent reason. My appendages danced over the controls, but all systems reported nominal functionality. Perplexed, I wondered why. If everything was operational, I drifted motionless in space, and then it dawned on me. Humans. Swiftly, I activated my communicator and broadcast on all frequencies. Greetings. I am Pilot Jevon of the Tertiary Strike Force of the Balkar race. Silence was the only response. I come to implore your aid. The Xylanthi Empire is decimating our people and our worlds, and the galactic community at large just observes, waiting like scavengers to pick at the bones of my people and my culture. Silence. Once, your race also battled with the apathy and betrayal of the races of this wretched galaxy. You suffered once as we do now, from the disdain and callousness of races that pledge to assist, yet do nothing, from races that vow to defend, but instead betray. Jevon checked his broadcaster. Everything appeared functional. He proceeded. We were discovered as a world a century after you had departed the galaxy. We never had the chance to know you, but I am aware of you. The ancient races speak your names in dread. As the sole race to stand against the evil that permeates the very core of this expanse of space. Silence. I comprehend why you turned your sensory nodes from the other races. I understand as my race is betrayed just as yours was. Silence. But you can aid us in bringing an end to the way things persist. How can you idly observe, doing nothing while peaceful worlds smolder? Silence. How can you be so pitiless? Silence. Enraged, Jevon bellowed into his communicator, "How can you be so cowardly?" He sat in fear, anticipating his demise, when without warning, his engines re-engaged. Bewildered, he surveyed his surroundings, wondering what transpired, when across his communicator a solitary word scrolled from dextral to sinistral. "Flee." Slamming his appendage down in anger and frustration, Jevon roared into his communicator. "Flee. Flee? My own kin believe I fled from a confrontation with the Xylanthi. Now you instruct me to flee like the other races. You wish to know the truth? You are the worst race of them all. I shall demonstrate flee." And with that, Jevon rushed to the engine room, tore his sidearm from its holster, and discharged it into the FTL drive that was his sole path homeward. His sole means of escape, his final hope. He fired until his weapon was spent, and the drive was little more than a pile of smoldering scrap metal. Panting heavily, he roared back into the communicator. "Cravens, you shall not skewer me in the rear. Gaze into my visual sensors if you intend to terminate me and be done with it." Silence. In a fit of rage, Jevon smashed his empty sidearm into the communicator again and again. Now it truly would remain silent. 2 days later, Jevon's ship still floated lifeless in space. He sat on the deck, hugging his limbs to his torso and still seething with anger. He regretted his rash decision and wished he had perished fighting the Xylanthi. At least that death would have held meaning. It was then that he felt a peculiar vibration. He looked up and around, trying to discern its source, when a strange voice, a human voice, but speaking flawless Balkar, seemed to resonate within his mind, emanating from all around him. "Pilot Jevon of the Balkar Empire, I extend you greetings," the voice said. "We have heard your plea for aid in your conflict, and having spent the last solar cycles researching your plight, we, the Terran Empire, gladly offer you our unconditional assistance." Jevon sat stunned, mouth agape. "Please stand by for your vessel to be brought aboard the used Kartak for repairs." Thank you," Jevon said meekly, unsure if the humans would be able to perceive him. "Your gratitude is unnecessary," came the reply. "In fact, we owe you an apology. We have distrusted the other races for so long, we forgot what it was like to be facing them alone. You reminded us of something we long thought was impossible." "What is that?" Jevon asked timidly. "That there can be other races out there, brave, defiant, good at heart, races that remind us of ourselves." And with that, the words ceased, and Jevon witnessed from his viewport 6 massive, angular vessels shimmer and appear from seemingly nowhere, enormous and bristling with weaponry. Aid had arrived. The humans answered.